All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dig into a process that quite literally shapes the world around us, from the highways we drive on to the power plants in our communities. We're talking about the environmental impact assessment.
So, picture this. A big new factory is proposed for your town. On one hand, hey, that means jobs, right? Progress. But on the other hand, what about the noise? What's it going to do to the air, to the local park? Is it a good thing or a problem? That's the big question. How do you even begin to decide?
Well, it turns out there's actually a formal process designed to answer exactly that question. It's called an Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA for short. You can think of it like a full-blown investigation, a way to figure out all the potential consequences of a project before anyone gets the green light to start building.
So, let's dig into that. How do we make sure we're making a genuinely informed choice about something like that new factory? Well, at its core, that's what an EIA is all about, asking the really tough questions before a single shovel ever hits the dirt.
And you know, the goal here isn't just to get a simple yes or no. It's way more nuanced than that. The whole point of an EIA is to map out all the potential ripple effects, both the good and the bad. It's about pushing for sustainable development, making sure the people in charge of all the facts, getting the public involved, and, this is key, finding ways to make the project better right from the get-go.
Okay, so how does this whole investigation actually play out? Let's follow the process and see how we map out a project's potential footprint on the environment.
So the full-blown process can get pretty complex, but you can really break it down into a four-step journey. First up is scoping. That's basically just defining the boundaries. What are we actually looking at here? Then you've got baseline data, which is like taking a before picture of the environment. What does it look like right now? Step 3 is impact prediction. This is the forecasting part. What might happen if this project goes ahead? And finally, mitigation and reporting. This is where you come up with solutions to reduce the negative impacts, and then you wrap it all up in a big final report.
And when we say they look at the environment, we mean they look at everything. We're talking air quality, noise levels, the water, both on the surface and underground, the local plants and animals, the biodiversity, even the quality of the soil itself. It's like a complete head-to-toe health checkup for an entire ecosystem. But, just finding potential problems is only half the job. What do you do about them? That's where this key idea of mitigation measures comes into play. These are the actual concrete solutions. So, for example, if the report says the project's going to be too loud, a mitigation measure might be to build sound barriers. Or if it's going to affect a stream, maybe you create a new wetland nearby to balance it out. It's literally the how we're going to fix it part of the plan.
Now, this whole process isn't just a bunch of scientists locked away in a lab. Not at all. It involves a whole cast of characters, a whole team of people. Let's take a look at who's actually involved in putting the plan together. And really, it takes a village to get one of these things done. You've got the people who are proposing the project, right? The project proponents. Then you have the environmental consultants, the folks who actually do the technical scientific work. You've got the pollution control board setting the standards, and an oversight agency making sure everything's on the level. But look at that list. There's one player there that is just absolutely crucial to the whole thing.
And that's the public. You, me, us. This part is so important. The public hearing is the moment where the local community, the people who actually live there and have that on-the-ground knowledge, get to have their say. They can voice their concerns, they can give their input, they can challenge the findings. When it works right, it's basically democracy in action. So, after all the science is done, all the data is collected, and all the voices have been heard, the whole process builds up to this one single moment. The moment of truth. Time to make a decision.
All right, so the authorities, usually a government agency, take that massive EIA report, they consult with all the experts, and they weigh all the evidence to make the final call. They can either give the project a green light, they can deny it completely, or, and this happens a lot, they can approve it, but with a list of specific conditions that absolutely have to be met.
But wait, getting a yes doesn't mean the story is over, not by a long shot. A really solid EIF process has long-term follow-up built right in.
You need ongoing monitoring to make sure the project is actually sticking to its promises. You need risk assessment to be prepared for any potential accidents. And you have to have seriously considered all the alternatives to make sure this project was actually the best option in the first place.
So, on paper, this whole thing sounds pretty great, right? It's logical, it's scientific, it's democratic, it seems like the perfect system. But is that how it always works in the real world? Let's flip the coin and look at this from a more critical angle.
And this is where you really see the tension. The promise of EIA is awesome. Improved, sustainable projects where the public gets a real say. But the reality? Well, sometimes the reality is a process that gets undermined by bad data, weak enforcement, or public input that gets totally sidelined.
And when you dig into the critiques, you start to see some common problems pop up again and again. Those public hearings that are supposed to be the heart of the process, sometimes they're treated like just another box to check. The incredible, deep knowledge of local and indigenous communities, often it's just completely undervalued. Those all-important mitigation plans, the how-to-fix-it part, can be super vague or worse, kept secret. And if the data itself is junk, well, the whole foundation of the process just kind of falls apart.
And then there's this, which is maybe the most damaging thing of all. We're talking about scandals, studies that are just straight up fraudulent or plagiarized. When that happens, it completely shatters the trust the entire system is built on. A tool that's meant for protection becomes nothing more than a rubber stamp, and that just defeats the whole purpose.
So where does that leave us? Here's the thing. For all its flaws, and there can be many, the EIA is still pretty much the best tool we have for trying to balance progress with protection. So the real question isn't, should we get rid of it? The real question is, how do we make it better? How do we really truly close that gap between the promise of what it could be and the reality of what it sometimes is?